In order to move away from this, we have to achieve the following conditions. The first is diversified polarity. The second is a commitment to international conventions and agreements without distinction. 3, a commitment to a moral understanding of justice, international peace and justice as an interest of humanity and not in the interest of certain parties to the detriment of others. 4, the need to face common challenges away from any interests of a strategic nature that may very often lead to situations that are impossible to control, such as the ISIS and other extremist groups. In conclusion, I wish to say that we, as Lebanese and Arabs, cannot think of peace, dialogue, without taking into consideration the conditions of the area in general. And Lebanon is, of course, close to such destabilizing changes. This is why, at the procedural level, we need the following. 1, we need to unite our efforts at the local, national, international levels in order to fight extremism in all its manifestations, whether the military, political or other levels, and to consider such a tendency as a threat to world peace and security, and challenging this phenomenon is an absolute priority. 2, we have to consider the conflicts within any Arab state as a destructive force within these states. And this is why we have to search for political solutions built on dialogue and away from military conflicts, especially if we have sectarian considerations. The political solution is what we have to call for. 3, we need to recreate a regional system or to reshape a regional system that is either Arab, that is both, that is at the same time Arab, Turkish, and Iranian, and that solves current problems through dialogue and a peaceful solution, while presenting guarantees to the interests of all. Without the reshaping of such a regional system, the conflicts will become even more exacerbated, and in the whole area we will not reach stability. This is why the solution lies in the exchange of guarantees and the respect of interests, and the solution of current problems with the aim of finding or re-establishing stability in the Arab Islamic area as a whole. Thank you.
شكرا دكتور علي فياض.
Thank you, Dr. Ali Fayyad, for your intervention, in which you have identified the conditions of the transformation of a dialogue into a serious and effective dialogue. And you highlighted the necessary to create a new regional order to achieve peace in the region. I would like to pose some questions from the audience. And I would like to give the floor, without further ado, to His Highness Prince Dr. Nayef Al-Soud, Vice Director of Information Affairs for the President of King Saud University. It will be about the information and building a common space for dialogue. Good morning, everybody. In the beginning, I would like to thank the International Center for Strategic Research and Information. In this international conference, we realized that in this moment and in this era, we need serious and fruitful dialogue which would lead to results at the national and international levels, especially that the Arab world is passing through acute crises. So especially that our Arab world is going through dire crises on all military, humanitarian, and intellectual levels. This is definitely due to the absence of serious and constructive dialogue. This dialogue has always existed, and all religions and cultures have called for such a dialogue, as well as peace. In this paper, in fact, I tackled the media and academic sides related to the building of a common space for dialogue, especially that media in all its forms and all its outlets that are different and many and that are becoming even more day after day, we must make sure that these growing outlets have serious content that respects human beings and human morals and values that are called upon by all cultures and religions. Communication between cultures is intuitive. It has always existed until our modern era, the era of communication and globalization, which contributed to the conversions of nations and the openness of cultures to each other, but it has also led to civilizational narcissism, cultural partiality, religious fanaticism, and introversion, which we definitely notice in some countries that are leading media. Globalization has positive impacts which are due definitely to dialogue, as dialogue is a human value and it is the highest picture of cultural interaction. It is the civilizational substitution to imposing one's opinion, and it creates love and peace as well as positive democracy. However, dialogue is facing different challenges on different levels. It has to face the reality that is full of violence, extremism, and grudge. This is one of the most important issues we need to discuss, because dialogue does not only need invitation to it to succeed, it also needs concrete steps to be taken on different levels. These steps should be taken by educational systems and should be in line with the needs of our modern era. Media should have educational programs that would spread nonviolence and non-extremism. Spreading a culture of culture and diversity is necessary. In fact, globalization and new technology have made it impossible for any society to exclude itself. We need new ways of thinking and new ways of living in order to make dialogue a daily behavior by individuals and groups, as well as nations. This is how we introduce the importance of dialogue among all dialogue counterparts, and thus dialogue counterparts can live in peace and in a civilizational way. Accepting another culture does not mean adopting it. It just means recognizing it, which is a must as long as this other culture does not threaten the existence of the other and does not spread discriminatory ideas based on race, religion, nation, social background, political affiliation, or any other reason. Difference must not be based on the non-existence of the other. Everybody has the same rights and obligations. It is now necessary to enshrine a culture of solidarity through all cultural, media, and educational means, because anything that happens in any part of the world affects all the world, whether positively or negatively. We need today a common realization that we all belong to Earth as a nation for all. There is a group of human morals, basic human morals, that we should invest in and we should focus in, such as justice, nonviolence, rejection of injustice, equality, tolerance, cooperation, love, and even feelings like happiness, pain, suffering, frustration, injustice, mercy, and others. This is why the essence of humanity has always been part of all cultures and religions throughout history. All of them enshrine tolerance, nonviolence, and rejection of terrorism in all its forms. We need today a culture of development and solidarity, as well as responsibility to build a common future for all. There is no perfect culture, nor a useless culture. Therefore, there is no culture that has the right to impose itself on others, as well as its ideology and agenda. The whole world cannot adopt one political ideology, for example, or only one point of view. Critical thinking and Manichaeism help us not to think that the mean people are always those who are different than us. It helps us realize that we cannot blame certain cultures or groups for the acts of certain small groups. Some religious speeches that are being spread on media outlets should not spread this idea that only one group is responsible, that a whole culture is responsible for what one group has made. We need to make sure that we have a group of values that we all share. Globalization has its positive impacts, but it also has its negative impacts. It can destroy certain cultures and identities, and it can lead to religious introversion or cultural introversion, which is dangerous. This is why it is necessary to have a dynamic thinking to make sure that unity is present and that diversity is being protected. There is a problem between diversity and pluralism. In fact, unity does not mean being all like each other, and diversity does not mean introversion and neglecting the other.
In order to we have to insist on the realization that this earth is our own land, the land of everybody, in a framework of unity between all human beings. This is the way to face the complex issues that the whole world has to tackle. In order to insist on solidarity, I wish to insist on the importance of the success of dialogue, which depends on the insistence on logic, the search for truth in a subjective and a scientific way, while depending on all means necessary for the analysis of facts, documents, historical facts, away from ignorance or lack of importance to be given to different principles, as well as duality in the consideration of the other. We also have to insist that cultural dialogue has to be based on the respect of those who are different, and we must not resort to violence. We must not adopt a stance of defense or offense, which would eventually lead to the failure of cultural dialogue. It has to be based on mutual trust and respect, subjectivity, while respecting each other in order to convey the message we wish to convey without harming other nations. It is absolutely necessary to enhance world international principles by the use of the mass media, since the future has become dependent on mutual respect and joint responsibility in order to find a solution to the problems of humanity. It seems that a true dialogue between individuals, nations, cultures, between the North and the South depends on our belief in basic principles such as mercy, love, coexistence, tolerance, internal dialogue, the belief in the strength of peace, the search for the truth, responsibility, common principles, and the dependence on the following principles. Culture of inhumanity that will not allow us to continue on this world. World peace has to be based on the peace between religions, which in turn depends on the dialogue between us. This is to say that the internet also represents a way to express our opinions, and we all agree on the importance of the influence of the mass media on our life, our way of thinking, and all those who resort to such means have to be more aware of what they are airing on such means of communication. There is a huge quantity of media messages that influence our culture, and we have to be extremely critical in our approach. As also, the way we express our opinion has to depend on facts and has to be respectful of the right of others. We also have to enhance the participation of others in order to raise our levels of knowledge. We have to develop communication skills, especially in social media, while providing fora for expression, for the expression of the opinions of groups of youth. It has become necessary now to encourage the culture of participation with the aim of enhancing tolerance and cohesion, which will lead to the avoidance of conflict, violence, and wars in the future. Peace no longer means just only the absence of violence and war, but it is also dependent on an infrastructure that is based on solidarity and justice. Tensions are no longer a result only of tangible violence, but it is also a result of psychological violence, which may be even more dangerous. In conclusion, I have a few points. The calls for a dialogue between cultures and religions have not led to an actual dialogue between such parties, which is a pity. We have to insist on the values of tolerance and dialogue, while taking into consideration development and the capacity to build a world that is based on respect of others and of the human rights. We also have to create a new strategy of globalization that serves the interests of all peoples. the logic of this new world calls for dealing with diversity with the objective of coexistence. This is why we have to create a context in which the individual may be able to correctly analyze the context in which he lives. We have to be careful when it comes to the mass media that have certain hidden agendas. All these points, if we actually manage to convey them to our children, we will be able to create the first building block of a new community that can overcome differences and conflicts, and which allows us to live within a social contract that does not distinguish between individuals. Thank you, Prince Nayef, for this extremely precious intervention that has set the conditions of dialogue. This as the intervention of this. Your intervention had